Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. I would also like to remind you that in addition to the audience in this room, we have people watching and listening online. So please consider your language and comments and testimony today. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person, and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking, and when presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For those joining us in person to provide public testimony or to present, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking so that the green light is showing on the mic, and off when you've completed your remarks so the red light is showing. And for all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. May I have a motion on the consent calendar? So moved. Second. Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Moyer seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The consent calendar is approved.
Opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name and unmute you or call you to the presenter's table. I'll set a timer for 2 minutes when you begin speaking and announce when your time is up, at which point please wrap up your sentence. We have received we have 8 people signed up for verbal testimony and received 26 written testimonies, which were shared with board members and staff. We're going to start with virtual testimony. Senator Lisa Reynolds, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I am Lisa Reynolds, state senator and pediatrician, and I'm here in support of the ordinance being considered later today, establishing safe school zones. I'm speaking now and remotely because I have a conflict during the more formal presentation on this topic, and I appreciate this opportunity. As a pediatrician for 30 years, I've seen firsthand how addiction harms and even kills young people and destroys entire communities. Overdoses, infectious diseases, homelessness, mental health disorders, including schizophrenia. These are all just some of the very painful and tragic outcomes of addiction. In order to help our brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors through this awful disease, we must continue our path of harm reduction principles, allowing people to access clean, uncontaminated needles while encouraging them to accept treatment and long-term supports. But as many of our community members have pointed out, the way that we've been providing clean needles is flawed. Used needles litter Portland sidewalks, parks, tree beds, and street gutters, and it's not acceptable. It presents a harm to a different population. Moving forward, I'd like to see 2 significant changes in how we administer harm reduction. I'm grateful for Commissioner Brim Edwards and Commissioner Moyer for working on this with us. First, needles should not be distributed near schools where students live and play. Principal Peyton Chapman of Lincoln High School has submitted written testimony in support, and I spoke with Principal Pamela Vanderwolf of Chapman Elementary, who said she welcomes this as well, especially for the neighborhoods her students traverse on their way to school. Furthermore, public health experts endorse this as a reasonable step. And secondly, we need to think about how we're going to remove needle debris from where programs hand out needles. Today's briefing is a modest but meaningful step. I will be bringing forward similar statewide policy in the 2027 session. I'm pleased to live in the county that is leading the way. We know that this bill is not everything, but it's an important start. Thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next up, we have Representative Shannon Isidore. Representative Isidore, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and County Commissioners. For the record, my name is Shannon Isidore, State Representative for District 33, downtown Northwest Portland, Linton and Cathedral Park. I'm also the CEO and founder of Behavioral Health Treatment Centers located here in Portland. I'm here to express my support for the proposed Safe School Zone ordinance. I want to thank the Commissioners Brim Edwards and Moyer for their joint sponsorship of this critical measure, as well as Senator Reynolds and her team for the continued work on this issue. This ordinance is a step forward in improving community safety and ensuring that our students have unobstructed, safe access to their places of learning, and by prohibiting the distribution of needles and syringes by mobile and temporary syringe service programs within 1,000 feet of K through 12 schools, we are establishing a necessary boundary that prioritizes the well-being of our children, families, and vulnerable populations. It's important to clarify what this ordinance is and is not. It is a targeted safety measure that addresses the specific challenges posed by mobile and temporary distribution sites in the immediate proximity of school grounds. It is not an interruption of care. This policy does not impact the permanent facilities that provide public health services, including harm reduction, addiction treatments, and mental health support. I would say that it is a necessary bridge. Since in the legislative session, it ended without the passage of Senate Bill 1573. This local ordinance is a vital interim solution until the state level legislation can be enacted and implemented. So by modeling this policy on the work that was started at the state level, the county is showing a very proactive leadership in balancing public health needs with the fundamental rights of students and safe school environments. So I urge the board to vote in favor of this ordinance to protect our school zones, support our children, families, vulnerable populations in our community. Thank you for your time and your service to this county.
Thank you.
Now we'll have in-person testimony, and I'm going to call down to the table. Mike Lazito, Michelle Mila, Karen Cheery, and Chiata Thompson.
Good morning. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mike Lozito. I'm an early childhood educator in Multnomah County, and I support the Preschool for All program. I support the vision, the investment, and the expanding access for families, but investment without accountability creates instability. Since my last testimony, I had the opportunity to meet with members of the Preschool for All leadership, and I appreciate that engagement. However, what remains unclear is not whether improvements are needed, it's what will actually change and how. There appears to be agreement that oversight, especially around who is functioning as the responsible adult in classrooms, needs to improve, but the details are still undefined. What will the county actually verify? What will that verification, how will that verification happen in practice? And when will those changes take effect? Because without clear answers, the structure remains the same, and that structure still relies heavily on provider-reported information. At this point, the issue is not identifying problems, it is whether there is a system in place that can consistently detect and address them. As public investment increases, so does the responsibility to ensure those funds are functioning as intended in real classrooms. And that includes how the workforce is supported. When the wage floor becomes a target, the system stops lifting the workforce the way it was designed to. At the same time, there does not appear to be independent classroom teacher representation in the advisory structures. That is a gap perspective. So the question is not whether standards exist, it's whether there are mechanisms to ensure those standards are being followed consistently across all sites. Public funding requires verification, not just reporting. So I will close with this. What systems will be put in place to independently verify who is functioning as a responsible teacher in classrooms? How will the county ensure compensation aligns with actual responsibilities in practice? And how will compliance be consistently monitored across all providers, just not reported? Because Preschool for All cannot succeed long-term if the workforce holding it together cannot afford to stay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Michelle Milla. I'm co-founder of Stadium Hood Neighbors. It's a subcommittee of the Northwest District Association. Our corridor adjacent to Providence Park and within a city-designated school zone has been directly affected by unregulated mobile syringe service programs for years. The Safe School Zone ordinance being discussed today would establish the first formal geographic limit on where mobile syringe service programs can operate near schools in Multnomah County, and I'm here in support of it and ask that it be strengthened before its adoption. Establishing a 1,000-foot buffer around schools is meaningful progress and reflects the work that this neighborhood has done, and so we're just asking for a basic boundary and talking about how it recognizes both public health and community safety. A boundary is only enforceable, though, if you know who is operating and where. And right now, the ordinance does not require providers to identify themselves, register their locations, or disclose distribution volumes in any public body. Registration is what makes the buffer enforcement doable in practice. And so we have two specific concerns for this resolution, for this ordinance rather, for the record, that we'd like to talk about, and first is around enforcement. Like I said, the current draft relies on things that are not in place. The way it's written, it talks about a court injunction and a letter of education. And in practice, that means a violation has to be witnessed, it has to be reported, and then litigated with no named people in the intake process, no timeline, and no designated person responsible for acting on these complaints. We're in a budget season right now, and I would ask the board to identify on the record who is responsible for receiving those complaints, what the expected response timeline is, and what that looks like on paper. And second, the public body carve-out in Section 3 remains undefined. It talks about express approval. A public body could mean express approval by a public body, and that could mean either a formal hearing with notice to the affected schools and neighbors, or it could just mean no public process and all. And this is all about accountability, and that's why we're here. So we need something to talk about how this is going to be enforced. I would just ask the board to define what that means before it's adopted. At minimum, we need exemptions requiring a process so your constituents can interact with that. That's what we're asking for. We need written findings. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Karen Chi-Ray. I'm a veteran business owner in District 1 and a member of Stadium Hood. And today I want to address the pressing issue that affects our community deeply, the current strategies surrounding harm reduction for homeless drug users. While the intention behind these initiatives may be noble, I believe we must recognize that they have shifted from harm reduction to harm production. The distribution of needles and drug paraphernalia through mobile units or brick-and-mortar locations may stem from a desire to prevent disease, yet the reality on the ground tells a different story. Many drug users today seem less concerned about the risk of disease and more focused on their next high. Unfortunately, this undermines the foundational premise of harm reduction to prioritize health and safety. Continuing to distribute these supplies without addressing the underlying issues is not helping anyone. Instead of enabling this cycle, we need to consider a more effective approach. As the saying goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We must stop enabling behaviors that perpetuate this crisis. Handing out drug paraphernalia rather than providing mandatory treatment is not the solution we need. I urge you to consider implementing stricter regulations around harm reduction distribution sites, particularly near schools. If individuals truly seek clean needles, they should be required to visit a brick-and-mortar location where they can receive counseling and support for any supplies are handed out. The often used term, meeting them where they're at, should be reevaluated. These unmarked vans that appear in neighborhoods attract drug users, creating an environment where they can easily access supplies while simultaneously connecting with dealers. This leads to a cycle of crime and despair within our communities. Just last week, I witnessed a heartbreaking incident where a woman was visibly suffering from a drug-induced seizure near my store. Despite her distress, many people passed her by and only one person stopped to check on her. This is not compassion. We must ask ourselves, is this really the message we want to send? Are we truly helping?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ciata Thompson, and I am testifying in strong support of establishing safe school zones. But I urge the board to strengthen this proposal from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet from all K through 12 schools. This is not a testimony against public health. Syringe service programs, wound care, referrals to treatment, other services can continue across Multnomah County. But school zones are different. Children should not have to walk past syringe distribution, open drug use, and discarded needles or overdose scenes on their way to class. The proposed ordinance acknowledges the need of a boundary, and that's important, but 1,000 feet is not enough in a densely populated neighborhood where students walk and bike and take transit or move through neighborhood parks and condors. A 2,000-foot standard better reflects the real geography of how children travel to and from school. I also believe harm reduction should reduce harm, not normalize dangerous public conditions around children. When distribution occurs adjacent to schools, without strong boundaries, accountability, or treatment pathways, many families understandably see that as enablement rather than intervention. I believe our state has leaned too heavily into policies focused on maintenance rather than recovery. We should prioritize getting people into treatment and stability, not simply managing addiction, and definitely in public spaces near schools. These syringe service programs also need accountability, transparency, and common sense leadership. Taxpayer programs should have clear standards, public reporting, and responsible oversight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Talia Giardini and Antonia Lawler. I don't see them here, so we'll call our backups Lightning and Senator Christine Drazen.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superabundance, We the People for All the People, AI Robotics Lab. Again, my main focus is on the body-worn cameras on the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department. I think is the most important issue that any of you will ever work on. And if you miss that on your budget, if you don't have a full rollout of the Lightning Super Body-Worn Camera program, I will never advise anyone to vote for any of you, ever. The most important issue. Now, getting on with the Elon Musk suing Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. Elon, you are the winner. You've already won this lawsuit. Mr. Brockman, let me give you some advice, sir. Never keep a diary. Again, in your diary, you stated it would be wrong to steal the nonprofit from him, to convert to a B Corp. That would be morally bankrupt. You just lost the whole company of OpenAI. You should settle immediately, quit disgracing the AI community anymore. Elon Musk is at such a level that you'll never be. You've insulted him, and this is the payback. OpenAI will unwind. It will go back to a nonprofit status. And let me say this to you, Sam Altman, $850 billion just went down the drain. Your IPO will never happen, and you will go down as the biggest disgrace in history. Congratulations. You met the best, Elon Musk. Enjoy your losses.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I first interacted with the Stadium Hood neighborhood prior to the 2025.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Oh, thank you. I am Senator Christine Drazen. I represent portions of Multnomah County, Clackamas County, Hood River, and Wasco County in the state legislature. Thank you for having me today. I first interacted with Stadium Hood around the 2025 legislative session, and a walk through their neighborhood and the passion of those neighbors had a quick and immediate impact on me. And we proposed legislation that year that would have created a buffer zone. Their interest wasn't simply the buffer zone, which is critically important, and we're grateful to see this initial first step today. It was a little bit of accountability for the people that are providing these services. And as the community members have stated today, it's critically important as you guys lead on this issue. Thank you for being willing to lead, that you do it in a way that it can, in fact, be sustainable and provide that benefit to the community long term. There needs to be a point of contact. There needs to be a way to reach out. There needs to be some consequences and accountability. I just want to quickly add to the record today the voices of families that are not able to be here, some of the people that provided public testimony on the original legislation in 2025 and 2026. Revitalization depends on addressing both public health and family safety. I urge you to find that balance so families like mine will continue to choose to stay, invest, and believe in Oregon's future. My son is 3 years old, and he knows what addiction is, what drugs are, what orange caps on the playground might mean for him. This is not the childhood I wanted for him. The decisions in Portland, Multnomah County, and Oregon that they are making regularly are having a negative impact on the public square. Families who can afford to leave Oregon are leaving. Families are disenrolling their children from public schools, and families like mine are basically not leaving the small, safe spaces that we've carved out because of the chaos. Please change this trajectory. This is an opportunity to begin to change this trajectory. Kids deserve safe spaces. There is an opportunity here today, and I ask you to move forward fully. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have one more person. It looks like Antonia was having some issues with WebEx. So Antonia, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for being in bed. I'm recovering from spine surgery. Okay, my name is Antonia, and I represent myself as a community member of the District 2 Hollywood area, as well as a mother of a recently turned 5-year-old preschooler. I'm also part of a group that has been working on gathering and presenting information to community members, city, and state officials about PPOP, a mobile syringe giveaway in our neighborhood. There is an ordinance called Establishing Safe School Zones being put before you today. As the title implies, proximity to syringe service programs, SSPs, is inherently dangerous and unsafe for children. The District 2 Hollywood neighborhood will not benefit from this ordinance as it is currently written. The ordinance fails to include the numerous preschools within 1,000 feet of a mobile SSP that comes to our neighborhood. Why would some of our most vulnerable school populations that have legal designations be excluded from a safety zone that includes K through 12? The findings in Section D in the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners fines are especially damaging as it will make things permanently harder for us. I want to make it clear that harm reduction is an important service, and I'm not against it when done responsibly. The out-of-state organization, Portland People's Outreach Program, PPOP, is a weekly syringe and other drug paraphernalia giveaway, not exchange. In addition to needles, they pass out pipes, tourniquets, and drug hookers. They are in our neighborhood for approximately 45 minutes once a week, and as they are not the exchange model, there is no enforcement of returning used needles for proper disposal. This results in used needles being strewn around the community for the rest of the week. An example of a negative outcome of this is one of our preschools within 1,000 feet has to have a morning syringe cleanup routine before school. My ask is don't vote for the ordinance as it is. Please include and protect preschool-aged children. Regulate mobile SSPs more strictly with in-state licensing or registration, and require the exchange model to limit used needles left near our schools. If you're not protecting preschoolers in all districts in this capacity, who is? Please work together to strengthen this ordinance so that more than just one district benefits. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all for public testimony, and we can move on to R1.
Thank you, Tasha.
R1, ratification of collective bargaining agreement 2025 to 2028 between Multnomah County and the Oregon Nurses Association.
May I have a motion? So you can't do both.
I'll move.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon moves, and Commissioner Singleton, I believe, seconds. Approval of R1. Good morning. I really am glad to have this before us today. I want to thank Labor Relations and the Oregon Nurses Association teams, especially to Jocelyn Pittman, who can't join us, for their tireless dedication over the last year. Because of their hard work, we now have a balanced agreement that honors our employees' contributions and marks a major milestone for the county. The resolution of these talks highlights the importance of effective collaboration and dedication of everyone who is at the table for this. With this, I will turn it over to, I believe, Elizabeth. You're going to go first? All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Calixto, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Interim Labor Relations Director for Multnomah County, and with me is Tony Kempner, Director of Nursing at our Integrated Health Services Unit. And I'll let Maggie introduce herself.
I'm Maggie Green, Labor Representative for ONA.
And then Roger.
Margaret Rogers, Community Health Nurse and an ONA Grievance Chair.
Thank you for having us today. We are here to request board ratification of the tentative agreement reached in successor bargaining with the Oregon Nurses Association. This was a collaborative effort from many county employees on both union and management bargaining teams, and I would like to take a moment to thank everyone for their dedication and their hard work. From ICS, we have Tony Kempner, Charlene Maxwell, and Debbie Powers. From Corrections Health, we had Lori Dolo-Scott, who is also here in the audience, Hallie Dodd, and from HR, Aaron Murphy and Joan Bikes. From Budget, we had the support of Leah Isaac. From Class Comp, we had the support of Tony McCasker, and from Labor Relations, Leanne Huapar. The county and ONA entered into negotiations over a year ago and reached a tentative agreement on a 3-year contract effective July 1st of 2025 through June 30th of 2028. ONA has provided notice of their membership's ratification, and it now comes before the Board of Commissioners for final ratification. The agreement is a significant step forward in recruitment and retention by providing market competitive compensation and improving work-life balance for our dedicated nurses. The key highlights are focused in the following areas. Cost of living adjustments. During the term of the contract, a 2.4 COLA adjustment in FY26, 3.5 in FY27, and 1 to 4 in FY28. Effective July 1st of 2025, this unit will also receive market adjustments for specific roles for LPNs at 1.95%, CHNs at 2.51%, and APCs at 4.21%. They will also receive swing differential increases from $3 from $2.50, and night graveyard shift differential increases of 50 cents. Corrections Health premium was also increased to 12% from 10%, while psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners will receive a premium increase to 12% from previously 10%. Additionally, longevity was also increased by 0.5% at each of our currently existing tiers of 5, 10, and 20 years of service. A greater number of advanced practice clinicians will now be eligible to opt into a salaried model that includes compensation for indirect patient care time in addition to clinical time. Preceptor pay will be increased to $4 from $2, and a standby pay increase will also take place to $6 from $2. In an effort to support our continuing education, a new certification premium was created at $2 an hour, and CE hours for CHNs and LPNs was increased to 32 hours. Compensation for our on-call employees was also enhanced in several ways by expanding their eligibility to certain already existing premiums, including but not limited to holiday pay for all county observed holidays, lead differential when assigned to provide coverage for regular shift leads in Corrections Health, eligibility for mandate pay under specific circumstances, eligibility for 1.5 times the regular rate of pay if the employee is required to return to work within 10 hours without 10 hours of rest, and eligibility for preceptor differential when assigned to act as a preceptor. Last but not least, the parties worked arduously to address work-life balance concerns, particularly as it relates to our Corrections Health operations and mandates. Thanks to the commitment of all bargaining participants, the parties were able to reach an agreement to create a mandate mitigation pilot program that provides nurses in corrections health options to refuse mandated shifts once per year, choice and shorter mandates, and ability to opt out of specific days for mandates with prior notice. I would like to extend our gratitude to all of the folks that were involved in this bargaining process. We appreciate the support of our leadership as well and the Board of Commissioners for allowing us to get to this point. That is all for my statement, and I am open to any questions. Actually, I will hand it over to Maggie, who also has a statement.
Thank you. Good morning. We represent community health registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and advanced practice providers that work mostly in public health, student health centers, corrections health, and integrated clinical services across the county. I want to recognize the amazing work all of our healthcare professionals do every day to take care of our community. And I want to recognize the strength that every member of our bargaining team carries every day and has carried over the last year as they fought for a fair agreement for our members that reflects recruitment, retention, safety, and respect. In these trying and testing times, the county and our bargaining team were able to come to an agreement. This agreement had wins and losses on each side. However, we as care professionals for the community are committed to ensuring our best efforts are made in serving the people. What we ask for moving forward is the county's commitment in helping us in doing so. We ask that the county continues to fight for the needed resources now and for the increasing resources for the future care of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from folks? Okay, well, we just appreciate everybody being here this morning. Tasia, did we have any public testimony on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one person signed up, Lightning.
Okay, so we're going to ask you to just sit in the seats right behind for a second. We'll have public testimony come up, and then we'll invite you back as we go to the board for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superabundance. Now, when we're talking correction health for the jails, Inverness, detention center, downtown, as I've stated to you is that I think we need to close Inverness jail. I think they're doing a terrible job over there. And my position is, if you look at the overtime that they're running right now on these two jails, and you look at the amount of people that have died in the detention center, and you look at the amount of complaints that are even coming from the Inverness jail on health care in downtown, I want Inverness jail closed. Now, there's a grand jury report that was done on that, and one of my good friends who used to work at City of Portland, Mingus Maps, agrees with me on this. And the reality is that we have deflection centers and treatment centers, and we need to keep people in these type of treatment centers and out of these jails. And if you were to do a study, again, on the homeless community, on how many of these people are rotated in and out of these jails, and I'm not talking just weekly, monthly, I'm talking by the year. I talked to an individual and I said to him, if I could implement, say, a universal basic income of $1,000 per month, how would that help you in your life? He almost started crying. And I said to him, well, what's going on here? He said, I have gone in and out of that jail over 150 times, and I'm here to tell you I haven't been guilty on so many times. They just run me in and out of the jail. And I said, so that $1,000 would have done what for you? He said, I'd be back with my kids. I'd probably be working right now. Instead, I'm just going back in and forth into these jails. We've got to stop that. The mental health professionals need to stop that and close Inverness jail. Close it now.
Thank you. All right, so we will go to the board for any questions or comments, and we'll invite our presenters to come back up to the dais. We really appreciate you being here again. We'll start with Commissioner Moyer.
Well, congratulations on reaching a settlement. I'm always happy to support a tentative agreement that everybody is endorsing. I thank everybody for the work they do on behalf of the county. I know that it has been a challenging several years, and budget cuts don't make that easier. So your work is very appreciated. I know that many of you work in very challenging environments, providing incredibly important services to the residents of Multnomah County. And I hope that this contract helps address some of the issues that you have been facing.
Thank you. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. I'm not one to be redundant, so I will say ditto. I just really appreciate the work. I'm glad that we're here and just cannot say enough about how critical I hear the work that you all do every day, and how much I hear about the folks that you're actually serving and how they just uplift you. So you don't always get the good feedback when you're in this field, but know that people are talking so well about y'all. So I'm really happy to see this today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Brim-Edwards.
Thanks for being here today. I'm glad to see it's already been ratified by the union. And I really appreciate both parties reaching a settlement on issues that nurses have raised with me on many occasions, including during our twice yearly jail inspections. It's one of the few opportunities we might have to talk to nursing staff when they're actually in their environment of doing their work, and just to share the challenges, which are fairly unique. And so I'm delighted we've been able to address some of those through this contract. And I would just say, as a daughter of a registered nurse who was an RN for about 55 years, I'm going to be enthusiastic, yes, and thank you for the care that your members provide in a whole variety of settings to our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yep. Thank you, Chair, and ditto to everything that's been stated so far, and just wanted to say thank you for the level of service that you provide to our community, both within our institutions and then just in general. I heard that staffing has gone up significantly over the last year as well, so I'm fully supportive. So thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to, once again, just thank everyone for the really hard work, the months of time that were spent, like getting to this agreement. I think it's a really important milestone. And I will say that, you know, the work that nurses do throughout so many different aspects of our county is critical for our ability to serve our community in the right way, whether it's ICS, whether it's Corrections Health, whether it is our Preschool for All program, whether it is our student-based mental health and clinical services. Like all of these are so many different places where nurses are a part of the vital work that we do, and we can't do that without you. So I'm really glad we're here today. I want to thank our labor relations team for all the good work, as well as the nurses team. And so thank you so much, and we will go ahead and have a roll call vote to ratify this thing.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim-Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Baker-Peterson?
Yes, the agreement passes.
Can I add something real quick? I just wanted to acknowledge both of the teams, and I somehow scrolled over a very important part, which is the O&A group, and so I want to acknowledge them by name. Jocelyn Pittman wasn't able to be here, but I want to acknowledge her as the lead negotiator. Maggie Green, Brian Howard started the negotiations and eventually passed it over to Jocelyn. But we also have Abby Wagner, maybe you can wave, Brian O'Connor, John LeClaire, Kennedy Bohm, Kay Logan, Christina Bode, Margaret Rogers, and Michelle Chow. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, and that was a very important part, so thank you for taking the time to recognize them. And we know we have so many people here as part of that team in the audience, and appreciate everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Chair, I just wanted to quickly indicate I'll be making a motion after R2 to consider my budget modification.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. We will consider that after we go through R2.
R2, creating safe school zone briefing.
So this is a non-voting item today, and this is brought here by Commissioner Brim-Edwards from District 3, so I will turn it over to her.
Great.
Excuse me, and Commissioner Moyer from District 1, so sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Moyer after I serve it up. So I really appreciate the testimony that preceded today's discussion, today's meeting, and just want to let people know that when we actually get to the point where we're voting on the ordinance, there'll be opportunities for further comment. Won't actually be voting today. It's really a discussion to talk about what we want to see and what's actually in this particular ordinance. So today I'm bringing forward a policy discussion to establish a safe school zones ordinance with Commissioner Moyer. At its core, this proposal is about student safety and access to safe routes to schools. Establishing a safe school zone will prohibit the distribution of needles and syringes by mobile syringe service programs within 1,000 feet of K-12 schools. This proposal seeks to create a balanced and practical policy. As a mom of 3 and a public school volunteer for about 3 decades and a parent activist, families should feel safe walking their children to school. Students should be able to focus on learning in environments that feel secure, welcoming, and supportive. And our students should not encounter drug activities that raise legitimate safety concerns for parents, educators, and nearby residents when they're on their way to school. State law provides for syringe service exchanges as an evidence-based disease prevention strategy. But we also have a responsibility to ensure that public health strategies are implemented in ways that are compatible with school safety and neighborhood livability. And this will also create a bridge to state action, which is a place for a more comprehensive statewide approach. As a local public health authority under Oregon law, Multnomah County has both the authority and the responsibility to establish policies that protect public health and community well-being. If adopted, the health department would establish an education and enforcement process focused first on compliance and corrective action. This proposed safe school zone policy creates reasonable guardrails by limiting mobile syringe distribution immediately surrounding K-12 schools. And I just want to emphasize that this is intended to be a bridge towards legislative action. And the question has been raised about whether it need to be done. The legislature is going to bring it back. As someone who has worked at the legislature for many years, legislative action is no guarantee. So I think this also creates some guardrails here in Multnomah County in the meantime, so the legislature can have an opportunity to act. We hope they act. I'm supportive of them acting. Also, there would be a lag time generally between legislative action, assuming they act, and actually implementation. So it could be almost 1.5 years without any sort of guardrails. That's why we're offering today a proposed ordinance that would provide a bridge. In some ways, we tried to model it after the state legislation with some minor differences. Obviously, the county has a different set of tools and roles and responsibilities than the state, but we feel like this is a draft that can be built upon. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the co-sponsor of the draft ordinance, Commissioner Moyer.
Thank you. I want to say that this is a product of a lot of compromise. So I know that it does not meet everybody's needs, and I'm sure that there will be disagreement about how and why Multnomah County would consider this step, but I do think that we need to be thoughtful about what our children are experiencing. My child went to Metropolitan Learning Center, which is in Northwest, a school that was a wonderful match for him, attached to a beautiful city park that unfortunately had some serious issues with individuals leaving drug paraphernalia. I support evidence-based practices to prevent the transmission of disease. Needle exchange is one of those evidence-based practices. I do think that needs to be available within Multnomah County, but I think we have to also balance it with the safety of others. I also am a strong supporter that we be very thoughtful about how we do outreach to individuals experiencing substance use disorders, and that it be done in a comprehensive fashion that is coupled with assertive outreach and the intention of trying to begin engaging somebody in hopefully addressing the issues that are impacting their lives. I did choose to co-sponsor this because I do think it is an act of a bridge to what will be. I do think the state is the right long-term regulator of this work and frankly should be the ones who do any level of licensing or regulating of a healthcare practice. But since we don't know what the state will or won't do, this ordinance does have a revocation clause in it so that we will not be overlapping, duplicating, or contradicting what would be a statewide policy, which I think is in the best interest of the county. And I appreciate people wanting it to go further. I'm not comfortable with that. I didn't want preschools in there, not because I think those children, I also have a preschooler, but I think it's a little bit different environment because we don't always know where they are. It would be incredibly difficult to actually enforce that. You know, and I think that we need to make something that is something we can actually wrap our hands around. When you regulate something, it has to be something that is reasonable to implement. And we don't know where every preschool is. There are several kinds of preschools. They are in houses. They are, which is great. I love the variety, but it makes the inclusion of preschool incredibly difficult to manage. And so that is why I am here in support and co-sponsoring this, is that I think it is a balanced approach to a difficult issue.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Michelle Rogelstad, and I am the Budget and Policy Director for Commissioner Brim Edwards, representing District 3. Thank you for having me, and I'm here today to walk through the proposed policy to create safe school zones. Thanks, Tasia. Next slide. Establishing safe school zones would prohibit the distribution of needles and syringes within 1,000 feet of kindergarten through 12th grade schools by mobile or temporary syringe service programs. Implementing this policy would improve community safety and support access to schools and does not impact permanent facilities providing public health services, including harm reduction services, addiction treatment, mental health, and additional supportive services. Next slide, please. As Commissioner Brim Edwards mentioned in her remarks, we're operating under the authority of the local public health authority, which followed up with a resolution to establish that the Board of County Commissioners acts as the local public health authority, as well as Multnomah County being a home rule jurisdiction with home rule authority to regulate any matter of county concern. Syringe service programs operate under the authority of the local public health authority, and adoption of a safe schools ordinance into code would use our local public health authority and our home rule authority. Next slide, please. As Senator Reynolds had discussed earlier in her testimony, the state legislature has considered policies to establish buffer zones for syringe service programs near children and students, and received testimony that we also heard from today from individual and Multnomah County residents. There have been bills introduced in the Oregon State Legislature and recently through Senate Bill 1573 in the most recent 2026 legislative session, which addressed this as well. That had a couple of sets of amendments, and this ordinance in particular was looking at the -2 amendments to that bill. That bill did not pass, nor did the amendments to it upon legislative sine die in the 2026 session. And as Commissioner Brim Edwards mentioned, this ordinance is designed to be a bridge until state legislation is enacted and implemented. Next slide. The proposed safe school zone policy is focused on limiting mobile syringe service programs from distributing syringes within 1,000 feet of a kindergarten through high school physical location, and public health and harm reduction services will continue to be provided and remain accessible throughout Multnomah County. Next slide, please. If approved by the commission, the county health department would establish a compliance education and enforcement program. Enforcement would be initiated by complaint, and violations may result in the issuance of a letter of education to ensure compliance. Pursuant to statute and any other rule, the county may file an action in circuit court to enjoin further commission action of any prohibited activities, and may recover all fees, costs, and disbursements related to such enforcement, and the policy would be enacted upon passage. Next slide, please. So for next steps, this is a briefing and a work session. May 21st is when this item, the ordinance, the policy itself, would receive a first reading, and then the second reading the following week, May 28th, with a slated adoption of the ordinance. And with that, the next slide, we do have a couple of panelists I'd like to introduce. One is Representative Tran, who I believe is virtual, and then Kara Shane Colley with the Friends of Couch Park. Is she on the WebEx? Great.
I'm on, but I cannot. There I am. Oops.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Vega Peterson and Commissioner. I am Representative Thuy Tran, and I proudly serve House District 45, Northeast and Southeast Portland and Maywood Park. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you in support of the proposed Establishing Safe School Zones Ordinance. I want to thank Commissioners Julia Brim Edwards and Megan Moyer for their leadership on this issue, and Senator Lisa Reynolds for her work on related state legislation. This ordinance would prohibit mobile syringe service programs from operating within 1,000 feet of K-12 schools in Multnomah County. This is not just about syringe services, where they are located. It's about how we protect our children and our school communities while preserving access to public health services that reduce overdose, disease transmission, unsafe syringe disposal, and barriers to treatment. I appreciate the county taking these issues well, you don't have to see me.
We can see you now, Representative.
Constituents in my district have raised real concerns about mobile syringe distribution in residential areas, including Hollywood District. These concerns deserve attention, transparency, and thoughtful response. As a healthcare provider and legislator, I know that public health and public safety cannot be treated as separate conversation. Harm reduction is one tool in a broader public health response. When syringe service programs are well coordinated and accountable, they can reduce disease transmission, support safer disposable of needles, reduce overall deaths, and help move people towards treatment. At the same time, families, students, educators, and neighbors deserve to know that safety concerns around schools are being taken seriously. That is why I support the goal of this ordinance. As this moves forward, I hope to see more detail about enforcement. I support a compliant-based approach, education and notice first, with an opportunity to correct. If violations continue, there should be clear penalties. In House Bill 3819, my bill to address illicit massage businesses in Oregon, we recognize that a warning alone does not automatically change behavior. We need clear enforcement tools in order to ensure compliance. Portland's chronic nuisance property code amendments advanced by Councilor Novick reflect a similar local principle. Start with a notice and an opportunity to correct, then allow civil penalties if violations continue. I also hope the county continue to consider how future implementation or funding could address preschool, childcare, and early learning settings. Those are also child-serving spaces, and many families will reasonably ask how they fit into a broader school safety framework. This is not a choice between school safety and harm reduction. We can and must do both: protect school communities, respond to neighborhood concerns, and preserve life-saving public health services. For these reasons, I support the proposed ordinance and urge the county to ensure it is clear, enforceable, and grounded in both public safety and public health. Thank you.
Thank you. And then just hit the button on there you go.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Kara Shane Colley, and I'm the board president of Friends of Cooch Park. And Commissioner Moyer mentioned her kiddo went to Metropolitan Learning Center. That is the school that is right next to Cooch Park. So as part of Friends of Cooch Park, our main goal is to make Cooch Park and the surrounding neighborhood safe for children. I am a mother of two, and through my work with Friends of Cooch Park, I'm thinking of the children in Cooch Park primarily. I would like to start out with just talking about needles. If we imagine a needle, it is not a neutral object. By design, it is sharp and pointy, and when it is a used needle, it carries the residue of bodily fluids. Handing out needles in the same line of thinking is not a neutral activity. With my own eyes, during a Friday night needle handout by Portland's People Outreach Project, I have seen with my own eyes drug users come to my neighborhood, as well as drug dealers come to my neighborhood. I have seen in the hours after discarded needles all over the neighborhood, and public drug use in the very spot where the needles were handed out. And the next morning, passed out drug users in the very spot where the needles are handed out. So this is not a neutral activity, the handing out of needles. I understand that harm reduction and syringe service programs aim to prevent the transmission of diseases, so I understand the public health reason for them. But in Oregon, there are no regulations around the handing out of syringes. And so I commend Commissioner Brim Edwards and Commissioner Moyer for bringing forth this ordinance, and I appreciate your leadership on this issue. I am not against harm reduction, I just think it needs to be regulated. As I mentioned, I try to keep children foremost in my mind, and so I am very happy to see the 1,000-foot buffer zone around schools. I think children are a vulnerable population and they deserve this buffer zone. I also think that public drug use has a tremendous impact on our community. And so syringe service programs should not just hand out needles, but should also provide some sort of treatment, referrals, or at least education when they're handing out needles. And finally, in the issue of non-compliance, with the Portland People's Outreach Project, my group, Friends of Cooch Park, reached out to them for months. We emailed, we called, and they just ignored us. So unless you have some sort of registry of people who are going to be handing out the needles, I don't know how you're going to be sending these violations or notices of non-compliance. They ignored us for months. I mean, maybe they would pay attention to Multnomah County, but it seems to me you need to know who the people are that are handing out the needles so that you can tell them that they are in non-compliance. If there's no registry, how are you telling them of non-compliance? And finally, I also believe, like the previous representative mentioned, a warning, is not enough. There needs to be a financial penalty, some clear penalty when people continue to violate this ordinance again and again. I don't think a warning is enough. There are, a lot of people who just kind of flout the rules and would continue to do it. So I do support this ordinance. I do wish it would be made stronger in certain ways, as I've mentioned, but I thank you, Commissioner Moyer and Broome Edwards, for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Representative Tran and Kara. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and discussion.
All right, thank you. We will open it up to the board then for any questions. We'll start with Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Michelle. I also want to appreciate the commissioners for bringing this forward. Also want to thank everybody who testified today earlier in the day, but also have reached out about this issue to the commission. I really do hope that this is a state bill that can pass. I agree with my colleague that this is better regulated at a state level. I also want to appreciate, Commissioner Moyer, you speaking to preschools and shout out my amazing constituent who showed up right after spine surgery to talk about this critical issue and raise what's happening in some other spaces. I just want my District 2 constituents to know that Councilor Pirtle-Guinea and I are working on finding some solutions to the issues that were raised in the Hollywood neighborhood around needle exchange. It's not necessarily about school zones, but there's some other pieces that have been raised in our district, and we look forward to sharing some updates on that soon, as we're just in the midst of some of those conversations. And I think we just need to continue to find ways to collaborate across government to fund this work and make sure that everybody in the community can be safe. One of my questions was going to be about preschools, so I appreciated hearing that feedback. And I think my only other question is really around the enforcement mechanisms and some of why you all landed where you landed on those components.
Thank you for the question,
Yeah, maybe
Commissioner Singleton.
we can address some of that. Just on the preschool issue. Pardon?
Oh, my question, I didn't have a question about preschool. Commissioner
I guess I
Moyer
want to
spoke to that.
just share about it since it's been raised by both public comment and since this is a work session. So, we welcome people raising issues about the preschool, and our initial thinking, we sort of went back and forth. At one point, preschools were in, then they were back out. The state bill didn't have preschools in it. And originally, because we were trying to align with state actions, so there was more consistency, as much consistency as possible. They were out. We did talk about it because when preschools, I'll just say, when I took my kids to preschool, like we walked. And then we also had the discussion about sometimes licensed family preschools are in a house and we might not know where that is. So we did go back and forth, and so I welcome the discussion about it because that was something that we sort of debated and discussed. And again, this is a draft. In terms of enforcement, we have different tools than the state, and so we relied in some ways on the tools that the county attorney told us we had. I think it's also important, and I welcome Commissioner Moyer's thoughts on this as well. It's important to recognize we're establishing a principle here and a very clear expectation. And there hasn't been that in the past. So frankly, anybody who a mobile syringe service could say, they were like within county ordinances or acting within state law. So this is very clearly setting a standard and an expectation. And I would hope all the legislators who gave testimony this morning recognize that they actually have more tools than the county has in terms of enforcement. And that I also hope that if we enact this prohibition around schools, that we'll see who actually follows the ordinance and who doesn't. And I would hope the legislature would consider, when we have bad actors, what additional steps need to be taken. Again, I think we are setting a very clear expectation and a prohibition about, in Multnomah County, what we would be expecting is going to be happening around schools. And I do think we can utilize the information that we have over the next year while we're waiting for the legislature to act, to inform them on what tools are effective. And I know that best practice usually is to educate people, let people know here's what the rules are, provide information if there's infractions, and then actually have some real consequences. That was our initial thinking, and again, informed by county council on what tools we had as a county. Commissioner Moyer, do you want to?
It wasn't on the preschool issue, but why did we land where we landed? Some of that was absolutely what is our jurisdiction, what is not. I'm going to be honest, this is like, it was not actually easy to, and I'm not saying we totally nailed all of it. There is a overlap with some weird caveats between what is the city of Portland and their right-of-way authority, what can we do under public health. So it is an attempt within our framework to do what we think we have the jurisdiction to do. And, you know, I totally understand the questions about the framework of enforcement, and we are in a very serious budget crisis at the state. And so, you know, I think how much money we were willing to propose needing to use to stand this up versus our other very difficult conversations about the budget also led to trying to be pretty fiscally prudent and yet have something we hope really addresses the issue. So I'm just being honest. Resources absolutely were a consideration because, you know, if we want somebody who's gonna rush in a car and go catch somebody violating this, we don't have the resources for that. So I'm just being transparent about the degree to which this was trying to thread a pretty difficult needle, and hopefully we're close. I think we really tried very hard to do the most practical approach.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have any other questions, just want to appreciate the work that's gone into this. And I think reiterate that we know harm reduction works. I appreciate so much of the testimony, acknowledge the importance of that. I hope folks understand that harm reduction is not just needle exchange. We tend to focus on one component, but it's actually a very large practice and body of work that I think our staff at the county and our contracted providers do really well. So I appreciate the work and look forward to the next steps on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions and comments. One, we know where all the preschools are, right? Seeing that because we put forward the licenses, or
So we don't license childcare facilities. That's a state function. We will know. I mean, we know where Preschool for All preschools are, but not other childcare facilities. And there's no difference at the state level between a license for a childcare center and a license for a preschool center. There's no preschool license, so you just kind of know childcare.
Okay, but we could request that for that information from like Dell. I'll send that question over.
Not regulated, it's complicated.
Got it. I think, just in short, I think we should make an effort. I mean, hearing that teachers and parents are going out and sweeping outside of their daycares for syringes, that's an issue. So I would like to know just cost. And the other question that I have is primarily for our public health team or our health department, just the feedback that they provided. I'm assuming that they helped build this, provide feedback on just what's in front of us.
Very much so.
Okay, great. And then as far as our police department and district attorney, I know DA Vasquez, he mentioned this to me during our meeting a couple weeks ago. What was his input on just potential enforcement and his participation? And what can they do?
That's a good question. I don't have feedback from the district attorney.
This is not a criminal act. I do want to make that clear, that we're not criminalizing this. It's a civil issue. We don't prioritize what this, well, again, I guess anyone could call the health department, law enforcement, anyone. I mean, it's not limited on who can report. I've not, because it's not a criminal-related activity, I've not talked to law enforcement about it.
Great. Like I said, I would like to just discuss or learn more, like how we could include, just again, the preschools, hearing from the Martinez family and Ms. Lawler this morning from her public testimony, and again, just imagining having an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old as well, just being exposed to that type of activity. And then also just learning more just how we're going to enforce this and just the overall impacts that it would have on our public health department.
Yeah, one of the issues raised was potentially having funding for enforcement and education. And earlier, as part of the budget, one of our budget work sessions, Commissioner Moyer and I laid down an amendment that would increase the cost of tobacco retailers' licenses, and also because that's not currently a full cost recovery program, and also for when there's violations of selling tobacco to minors, that we would increase those fines to create some pool of money if it's needed for both the education and the enforcement of this measure.
Got it. Definitely supportive, likely be putting forward just a few friendly amendments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I have some questions. So I really appreciate the discussion on this. I appreciate the work that happened at the state legislative level to move this conversation forward. So some of the questions I'm going to be asking today were actually questions that we've shared with both of the offices several weeks ago. We have responses to those questions, so I want to make sure they get on the record today. I will say that my questions really center around wanting to better understand the problem that we're trying to address, and based on that, whether or not this approach would actually do that. And then I really, and we've had some conversation about this already this morning, which I appreciate, but I want to make sure that we're discussing this policy concept with a realistic and concrete picture of what it would cost to implement and to enforce it. And I still honestly don't have a clear picture of what is imagined for enforcement under what's being proposed today. So I still have some questions about that. We talked a little bit about some of the considerations around what's already established. And so I'd love to understand a little more the considerations around alternative policies, programmatic and partnership approaches to addressing specific concerns, illicit drug use, the materials that are used in these programs. It's already a prohibited activity. Cities, and that's something that is a criminal activity, that is something that can be enforced by law enforcement, that is something that the DA can prosecute. So that is something that's already on the books. It's already illegal to use drugs around schools. Cities are also able to enforce unpermitted activities in the public right-of-way, and I know that there have been issues with organizations setting up syringe distributions or exchanges in the public right-of-way, and that hasn't, and trying to curb those activities hasn't been successful with the city, even though that's, you know, part of their code. So, and I understand how frustrating that could be, but I think that there are ways to address like the debris issue without necessarily creating a regulatory program. Or I do think that it's, and I am concerned about this not happening at the state level. I think that that is the right place for it, but I want to understand a little bit about, like, is this policy intended to apply in all areas of the county, or is it just in unincorporated areas only? If it's in all areas of the county, have there been discussions with the other Multnomah County cities to discuss the proposal? And then I am curious, just because I know we had some testimony about like 1,000 versus 2,000 feet. I understand that this and the state one was on 1,000 feet, but is there a map to show what the zones would be looking like and what it like and what the overlap is, or what areas of the county are outside of that area? I'm just curious about what that actually looks like between, you know, even if just using the K through 12 schools, but if there is consideration of expanding this policy to include childcare centers or preschool centers, like what that map looks like as well. And then again, just some more, just really, how would complaint investigations and enforcements work under the proposal? You know, the ordinance, as I read it, says finding that an SSP is in violation of the subchapter, like that's kind of our mechanism, or that's the measure. Does that require direct observation by county staff? Is that like who has to observe it? And then if the proposal doesn't have a registry or other means to identify and organize providers, or create a structure for enforcement action. So my consideration is like without a registry, a fixed location, or other method that we have to identify an individual organization or an SSP who's suspected to be in violation of the policy, how would notice of violation be issued to an appropriate party? Is this intended to be a 24/7 investigation and response? Like, there's just some questions I have around what this looks like, because again, all of those answers have impact to what the county is required to do, what we would have to set up, and how much that would cost. So all of that is interesting to me.
Do you want us to answer some of those questions?
I want to get them on the records. These are questions that, you know, your offices have had for several weeks. So I also, my understanding is that a legislative committee chair does intend to bring back a state policy next session. So we've heard a little bit about why we would advance a local policy rather than a state approach, just to set that stage. There was a talk about a revocation clause, but that's not in the ordinance as it's currently proposed, the material that's shared today. So that's something that I have a concern about. I think that I am curious, and I know we have the health department here, I am curious a little bit about their input on this policy and kind of their estimates in terms of costs and infrastructure to implement this, and both in terms of development of like rulemaking and communication and outreach, as well as the ongoing enforcement. So if they want to speak to that today, I would appreciate that. I appreciate you talking about the potential funding source for this program, but again, I think it's going to depend on the cost. And then I'm just curious if there's been any connection with providers to get their perspective on feedback on this proposal, like the folks that are doing this type of work in the community. And then this is a question that I don't think I've shared it with the county attorney's office, but I know that there was a similar local ordinance in Washington State that was repealed following a decision that it likely violated the American Disabilities Act. So I'd like to better understand the nexus of that to what's being proposed today.
So just a couple issues. I will say that we did answer many of those questions as we were drafting it and working and listening to questions that the health department raised, questions that the county attorney raised. I'll answer some of them now, but because I think that's part of the purpose of this morning. You ask, is it all areas of the county or just unincorporated? No, it's all areas of the county, so any around school zones. So then the issue of the 1,000-foot versus 2,000, we had settled on the 1,000-foot in a dense community where we have we're more densely populated. 1,000 feet seemed the right circumference, which would give students a way to get to school specifically around their school zone. The registry issue, we talked about a registry, and I'm open to having a registry. The information we received from some of the partners at the state who asked us to identify this is that they intended to set up a registry, and it might be duplicative work. So it was more of an efficiency, but of course, I'm more than willing to, I think it's a good idea, but it was, again, that the state, some of the state proponents saying that they were going to set that up, and again, not wanting to duplicate things. As I said at the very beginning, this is one step. We had a meeting the other night, and I appreciate that this was a town hall forum that Senator Reynolds had, and many issues were raised. And what I tried to emphasize is this ordinance is not going to address many of the issues, the very legitimate issues that were raised. Some of them aren't within the county's jurisdiction, and we need to partner with, again, the cities in the county around some of those things. We need to partner with the state, but this was one step. I think, I'll just say, 30 years ago, my husband was a state legislator, and there was a near fatal accident of a student near Atkinson Elementary School because students had to cross division. And so the state passed a law which is doubling traffic fines in school zones. And I think it's had its intended impact in that when drivers see the signs that say traffic fines double in school zones, that they know that there's an expectation that they slow down. And the vast majority of people do that. So again, this is one step. It's not going to solve all the other problems and all the other very legitimate issues that have been raised. And I'm going to go back to your sort of very beginning question of what is the problem we're trying to address. I think the community has been very clear about what the problem is we're trying to address. And, you know, as a parent, I think if I were sitting at that table as a parent, I would say you need to do more. But I do think this is the right first step. And I don't think it's at all unclear about what we're trying to address. And there's also, once we adopt the ordinance, like a rulemaking process or a process by which we develop what the program looks like, and I think we can continue to get feedback. And again, your questions, if you didn't get written answers, I do think we tried to work with staff across the county to take it into account. When the health department raised the issue of cost and implementation, we came up with a mechanism to pay for it. What I wasn't willing to do is, one of the suggestions early on was we just shouldn't take action even though that we're the local public health authority because the legislature is going to do it. And while I appreciate the legislators coming this morning and being supportive of the county taking an action, the reality is they hadn't acted, and I wasn't. If the county could do something, why would we wait? Why wouldn't we create a bridge? So the whole, let's just wait and see if the legislature does it, to me was not an acceptable approach for the county when we could take action. And I'm just speaking as a parent, I know what I would want as a parent a government jurisdiction to take action if they could. And again, ideally, and to Commissioner Moyer's point, ideally, the state is the appropriate regulatory body for this. And, Multnomah County is not the only county that might have this issue. So much better that it be approached from a statewide issue, but I think we can take an action now, and we should.
Great. Can we have the health department come up and to answer some of the questions about the implementation? And I appreciate that as you were developing the policy, you considered our questions, but we never got direct answers to the questions. So to me, we always try to answer commissioners' questions directly when they are sent to us. So I just want to make sure that we have that same understanding with commissioners' offices when we send questions in advance. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So thank you guys for being here. This obviously is a program that has a huge impact, or a policy proposal that has huge impact to the public health. So I'm just curious about, based on what, what is before us in terms of this ordinance, and what are the impacts in terms of our public health and our health department? What are some of the work that this is going to entail? What are the kind of maybe open questions that you still have about it? I just would love to get your perspective on this as we're moving forward.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kirsten Aird. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the public health director. And we'll try to save some of the stuff for this afternoon, but I'm not going to lie, this is all very entwined in a budget conversation. So I think, as I certainly have been engaging in conversations on this topic early on, our approach has really been to help clarify, again, what the problem is we're aiming to solve. I certainly have heard from all of you and from the testimony this morning a wide range, from really wanting to address syringes near schools to wanting to address illicit drug use, and certainly always wanting to both hold two truths. The truth that this is an evidence-based practice, and I really appreciate that, hearing that repeatedly, I think is so important in a world where public health science is being challenged, and also holding the truth and the importance of wanting to keep kids safe and enjoy their walks to school. So kind of in thinking about all of that, what I've aimed to understand is, again, what we need to know so we can implement a program to fidelity, whatever that looks like. And the broader the restrictions get, the harder it will be to do one of our other statutory responsibilities, which under ORS 431 and 433 is to conduct community-based programs for the purpose of preventing the spread of communicable diseases. And so in trying to balance that and think about how we do it, it's making sure that both things can happen. And again, understanding the enforcement mechanisms so that we can do that to fidelity is going to be really important. And so I have shared, when I think about capturing the cost of what this would look like in a very constrained budget environment, again, depending on the scale of enforcement, I've shared numbers between the range of $133,000 and $435,000. Again, kind of on scope and scale. So kind of take a pause there and see if you want to add anything or if there are questions about that.
That's assuming, that range is assuming, like, what would higher end would be like a registry that we have to manage. Is that some of those?
I didn't actually even get to the registry because anything that had been talked about was really just in responding. So when I think about, I don't know the N.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is actually not something we've heard a lot about at the Public Health Department and in all of our coalitions. And so it's a little unclear. I've heard of one organization. And so it's the scale, right? And then it's the economies of scale. So do we need to go out and look for it? Or do we just have a phone or an email that somebody can respond to, and I need to have somebody staff that, and then we get told where it's at, and then, we also have to think about safety and time of hours, and so am I sending people out late in the evening, and then that's 2 people I'm sending out. That's kind of the scope, and we know, and I have been implementing public health regulations for 2 decades, over 2 decades. And when I think about that, it is, and Commissioner Bernard-Edwards, you said it, it starts with evidence-based practice around education, communicating, making sure we all know what the rules of the games are, right? It's not a game, but rules of engagement. And that takes time, it takes human time. Do we want signage? Do we need to put signage around schools? Do we need to put signage 1,000 feet around schools? So there's that piece, and then there's the follow-up and enforcement piece. And then some of the questions that I also have, I am not an attorney. I am your friendly neighborhood public health director, but I do have questions just about some of the changing legal landscape in regards to zoning, whose laws supersede who. So if I send somebody in to enforce and find out that somebody's within 1,000 feet of school, but somehow they happen to get a permit from the city to use the sidewalk temporarily, I don't know whose law comes first, and I wouldn't know what to say to somebody. So I think there's attempts to try to address that in the policy, but those are questions around enforcement that become difficult. And then with the federal, ruling that came from the judge around Lewis County in Washington, the more restrictive it gets, I don't understand what we're totally bumping up to legally. And so I want to set up a program that can work and would be in fidelity and meets the needs of what the constituents are asking for and the public health needs. And so just needing to understand that, and the more it is, the more that might cost.
And I would add one of the things in terms of scalability, we have to have a certain amount of.
Can you state your name for the record?
Yes, I will. Hello, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Rachel Banks. I'm your friendly Health Department Director. But part of it in terms of setting up a program is like, regardless of scale, we're going to have a certain amount of infrastructure to set, to do rulemaking, to set up whatever the lines are, to have somebody answering phones or emails or responding to those. Kirsten mentioned the people that are needed to do it, and kind of the safety concerns that we would have in some areas of needing multiple people, even though it might not be a huge scale. So I just want to say that there is a scalability of a range, but there's also a baseline that we would need to have no matter what, no matter how many complaints we got. And then, of course, with any sort of thing that we would be enforcing, we would want to do a lot of education so people understand and be able to differentiate the sort of activities that people might be seeing and calling, like, was that a syringe that was handed out? Was it drugs that were handed out? And then who, multiple different enforcement things. So I think we would certainly want to do a lot of education and assume that people with understanding, that's our approach with any of our licensing sort of things, that we want to assume that retailers or restaurant owners or folks want to understand what the rules are, and in most cases want to follow them. And so that's part of the reason why we take that approach too, that is enhanced by materials and signage and all of those things.
Thank you both. Any other questions for the department while they're here?
I do.
Okay.
So we did have a previous discussion with about the Washington case, and it just didn't apply, is what we understood. But the reason why we have in-house counsel is to advise the people who are non-lawyers. So I think you'd have that at your disposal, hopefully. I want to address that. I heard a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do this, but I would like to know, how is the county health department thinking about the larger community health and the safety of kids? Because I heard a lot of reasons why this may be complicated or challenging, but I didn't hear a lot of, hey, we're concerned about this, and here are some other strategies or how we would implement it. Because again, we're the local public health authority, and I'm just going to say, when I first got on the commission, the health department was handing out foil and straw as a harm reduction. And there was a lot of, you weren't here, but there was a lot of community pushback of how was that actually promoting community health. And so I think there's an obligation for the health department. The health department hands out syringes to also be a leader in how we're going to balance the two things you started out your statement saying, of how we're going to balance evidence-based practices, which obviously Foil and Straw was not, evidence-based practices that prevent disease transmission and all the things that we know, but also that are the right things for our broader community.
I would start out by saying, I want to clarify that we're not saying we shouldn't do this. And I think that what I heard is responses to questions about what our enforcement considerations would be and the sort of things from our administrator roles. We also hold multiple hats, of course, as parents and some of those things, but as an administrator role, who would be tasked with setting up an enforcement or a complaint-driven program, the sort of considerations. So I just want to clarify that. And also in terms of the harm reduction programming, we're not, also, I know you know this, but for the record, we are not distributing foil and straws or any of those things at this moment.
That's because some commissioners spoke up. I'm just.
So, Commissioner, I want them to be able to answer, and also, they were answering questions that I had about what enforcement and the apparatus would look like to implement this. One thing I will say, like, I think our health department really does a good job of trying to answer our questions without taking stances on policy, because they know that setting the policy is our job.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies for interrupting.
Thank you for your question and your comment, and absolutely, I take very seriously, as I do our staff, in taking care of the entire, all 800,000 people, and you're going to hear me this afternoon tell some wonderful stories, particularly in regards to wanting to protect children and their safe routes to school. And boy, let me tell you, I have a lot of ideas for safe routes to school. We could start with tobacco marketing. But anyway, that's another topic, I understand that. But when we're looking at this and trying to hold that, one of the things, certainly since my time here, that I've not engaged with is a neighborhood conversation. I'm not sure people understand the landscape. Maybe they do, and I'm only going to be able to claim new for only so much longer. But in my time here, I've not been privy to a conversation that brings together all of the jurisdictions, the neighbors who so thoughtfully shared their stories today, and the providers to try to understand each other's stance and think about where the mutual benefit is, because it's there, and I think very much, you're talking about this being a step, that's absolutely the conversation we want to be having. So I'm happy to be part of those conversations. They have not happened yet in my time here, but I do think that's a step in the right direction, is listening to each other and coming to understanding. And certainly, again, just in response to what you all agree on, I just wanted you to know what it would take to enforce that, and it's on a scale based off what you all determine.
Thank you. And I will say that I take seriously, I mean, I know we all do, but like, I take very seriously what this board puts forward as a proposal. And if this is something that we are putting forward, that it's going to be a policy of the county, it's going to be a ordinance for the county, like, I want to make sure that we understand what we're taking on in terms of what it takes to implement this, and implement in the right way that it's going to have a meaningful impact on our community. And so this is really what this conversation is about, because we have heard from for folks who are frustrated. I mean, I used to live right across the street from a park and would find needles in the park when I was there with my kids. So I understand this is an issue, and I want to make sure if we're stepping into this space, that we're doing it in the right way, with fidelity to what we're trying to accomplish. And I do think, like, there's kind of this tension of what's going to happen at the state level, right? Some of this is like, we need to move forward because we don't know if the state's doing something, but at the same time, it's like, but we aren't going to put a registry in because that's something that the state might do. So I think that is something that I think we're going to need to figure out before we decide what direction we're going to take as a body. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other questions or closing remarks from Commissioner Moyer or Commissioner Brim-Edwards?
I just had a quick question, I think, on the next steps, because it sounds like there was a lot of different items brought. I'm not sure that I heard a response around the Washington ordinance. So just what's kind of the next steps for this?
Yeah, we can get a response to you on the Washington ordinance. It was a much broader issue, but you.
Oh, I saw it. I just want to know what the response is.
Okay. So next steps, I would expect commissioners, if you have issues with the base ordinance, to share that with our staffs, or if you have potential amendments. Commissioner Moyer and I will talk about whether we might bring forward other amendments. I think it was a good idea, Chair Vega-Peterson, to reach out to the other cities in the county, which I will do. I have not heard from them as this being an issue, but certainly we want to hear from them what questions they would have. I also think there's plenty of body of work to be done outside of this ordinance. One of the big issues that got raised the other day was and this doesn't have anything necessarily, maybe not have anything to do with the mobile syringe providers, but just the syringe litter that is all over the place, and like who is responsible for cleaning that up. And that, from my perspective, most of those are, if they're public spaces, that would be the cities. Obviously in Multnomah County, that's another thing, but it's completely unrelated in some ways to the ordinance. It's still related to syringes, but it's a different issue that needs a different solution. But I think there's lots of places where we can partner with the cities, or the community, or the providers to address some of the other issues that are just as important, but not addressed by this particular ordinance.
Okay, great. Did you have anything? Your mic's on. I just was curious. Oh, okay. All right. So right now we have this the ordinance scheduled to come back on May 21st. If there's any, I'll be checking in with folks to see if folks are comfortable with that timeline, or folks want a work session or something like that beforehand. But that's the next thing that's on our agenda for this policy, is to bring forward the ordinance on the 21st in a couple weeks. Okay. I know we have a item you're bringing forward. We have had folks who are waiting very patiently to take a photo after the ratification. So do you mind if we take a quick recess and then we'll come back right there? Okay, so we're going to recess for about 3 minutes to take a photo to celebrate the ratification of the ONA contract. Thanks to and the OANA teams, and thanks everyone for taking part in that photograph. So now we are back in session. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to consider my shelter transition budget modification via unanimous consent.
All right, we have a motion to consider an item by unanimous consent. Okay, so Jenny, I'm going to need some help here. So we have, so do we have a discussion about it before we have, or do we need the second and the third before proceeding?
Thank you, Chair. So for a unanimous consent item, it will require 2 votes. First, we have a motion as made. We'll need a second on that to discuss whether or not the unanimous consent item should be heard by the board. So we'll have a motion, a second discussion, and then it requires a majority of the board, at least 3 people, to vote in favor of hearing it. After that, we move on to discussion of the matter on its content, and in order for the matter to pass, it requires a yes vote of all members present. So we have a motion, so we'll need a second at this point.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to consider whether a unanimous consent item should be heard. Discussion on that motion.
I don't know if I understand the discussion.
So right now, we're not considering the actual motion, we're just considering should we hear it, right? I guess my question is, Commissioner Singleton, what is the purpose of having it brought forward today under unanimous consent?
So this is a budget modification that is being brought forward today, so we give the most time to our providers who are trying to transition folks out of shelters that are closing and into housing or other sheltering opportunities. If we wait until the agenda time that was set for me, it will be about a month that they have to do that work, and so I'm bringing it forward today to give them more time.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item?
You have a question. Was this posted with the meeting materials?
It was not. I sent this in and was told that the materials weren't all in on time. I'll be honest, I'm a little frustrated because while my item didn't make it on, we didn't get all the materials for the last item until yesterday morning at 8 a.m. I requested the 7th, I did not receive it, and so that's why I'm bringing it forward in this manner.
Yeah, maybe the difference between the item we just had and this item is this is an action item. We didn't actually take a vote on the previous item.
I'm not sure. I think the deadlines that we've set are the deadlines that we've set.
I'm just saying I think it's a material difference because you're being asked to vote on something without any sort of visibility from the broader public. When did commissioners get the? I just received it within the last.
You don't, because it's not on the agenda, so I have the materials here is the way I was instructed to follow this process for using unanimous consent.
So it wasn't posted and commissioners actually don't have the proposal.
Just to clarify.
I'm just
okay.
Clarifying because normally we get things a week in advance. Is your proposal coming with a person-level plan or specification about how the $1 million is going to be spent?
And so just for procedure, right now, commissioners, the discussion is whether or not to hear it and discussion about the, so first we'll vote on that and then we can have opportunity.
Right, and this is relevant to whether we should hear it this morning.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the procedure, so we will have that 2-vote process and the opportunity for further discussion.
So this does not, I do not have written out a person-level plan, but as you'll see in the outreach you received from the providers whose shelters are closing, that's exactly what they want to be doing and why they need some resource to do that. They don't currently have dollars in their budgets to be able to transition folks currently out of the shelters that are closing on June 30th. But that will be, I think, a little bit more of what I'll talk about in the content of the budget modification.
And I think just for clarity, for what's under consideration in terms of the, like whether we consider this or not, we don't have a mechanism to post materials for things that are brought forward under unanimous consent at this time. So I just wanted to clarify that's why materials weren't posted ahead of time. We really don't have a mechanism for that, so that's something that we could look at.
So we have a mechanism to also share proposals with, I'm just going to say, I was a bit surprised to get sort of some advocacy emails last night about something that hadn't been shared with the commission or posted for the public in order to be able to, if people want to comment on it or had questions about it. And I think we post all kinds of things. It could be posted under other business.
I think the posting of it is something that we should address as a commission, but I will be clear that moving this forward and you getting information from providers is because I've developed this with providers. So when we're able to actually move into discussion of the budget modification, I'll be happy to share the conversations that happened that led to this.
Any other questions under the discussion of whether we should consider a unanimous consent item? Okay, and do we have Commissioner Jones-Dixon online? Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Did you have any questions on whether to consider this at this point? Otherwise, I'll move to a vote.
Let's move to a vote. Thank you.
I have one final comment.
Oh, okay.
So we do have a mechanism. As I understand that they had said that this couldn't be on the agenda until the 21st. We do have a mechanism, and this is maybe a question for the county attorney. We can call a special meeting if we want to take action on something with, if 3 commissioners call for it, correct?
That is correct. We have special meeting protocols.
So the bringing something without public notice, we do have a remedy. We could have, for example, have a meeting on it next Tuesday if 3, and vote if 3 commissioners requested that.
That's correct. That is one option available. Our board rules also provide for unanimous consent items.
Thank you.
And they're not mutually exclusive.
Okay, thank you. So with that, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Bram-Edwards?
No.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vega-Peterson?
Yes, the motion to consider an item by unanimous consent passes. We will move on to discussion on the underlying item. Commissioner Singleton, can you explain your request, budget modification?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. This budget modification is to allocate contingency funds in this fiscal year 2026 to allow $1 million to be allocated to our shelter providers. It is specifically for the shelters that are slated to close by June 30th and therefore won't have access to the planned 2027 dollars for shelter transitions. The providers and department have been doing a great job on trying to figure all of this out and getting into how to wind these shelters down. But the June 30th closure in particular is proving to be a challenge for the providers. Sorry, Jenny, you probably need this too. I think it's really, we have the responsibility to make sure that they have these dollars. I've spent time talking directly with the shelter providers. Me and my team have had conversations with the department, and there just simply was not resources, as we heard in our budget work session yesterday with Homeless Services Department, that these shelters that are closing don't currently have resources allocated to either do housing placement out of shelter or frankly to voucher folks if they need to in a hotel or motel before there's another shelter bed available. So it's really critical to me that we don't have anybody exiting these shelters closing on June 30th and returning to the street simply because we lacked the will to get money out the door to them. This is something that I think, one, I know there's been questions about if the money's not spent, what happens. That all comes back just like any other allocation that we do in our budget. Also making sure that we have outcomes and that being reported. That is consistent with how the Homeless Services Department always does their practice with their contractors around people leaving shelter, whether that's housing placement or wherever their exit destination is. So I don't have concerns about their ability to track that for these dollars as well. And in addition to the APR I handed out, you'll see the budget director's letter regarding contingency.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Did we have any public, I'm assuming we don't have any public testimony. Okay, great. So we'll go to discussion under the item. Any questions for Commissioner Singleton?
Sure. Great. With the end of the fiscal year coming up quickly, and this being a this year allocation, how did you land on $1 million? Will that be the right amount? If it is not all spent, what happens with the excess?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I forgot to mention, we have both the Homeless Services Department and the Budget Office in the room if we need any answers.
Yeah, they should come up because, I mean, I'm going to have a lot of questions for them.
Welcome down.
So like any other dollars that are underspent in our contracts, these dollars would come back to the county. $1 million is where I started, and it wasn't, the providers tried to find more detail to give me exactly the dollar amount that they need, but we're struggling a bit with that on a short turnaround time. But do, I think, have the intent of, again, they have some folks who they could do housing placement with and need both moving cost and rent assistance. And then they have some folks that may be in a motel shelter that they could voucher into a hotel or motel until another shelter bed is open. And so those costs are a bit unknown depending on which hotel or motel is used for that vouchering.
That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Great. So we had a pretty extensive discussion about this the other day when you were before us, both about the shelters that are proposed to be closed in the chair's budget 2 months in, and also the two shelters that are scheduled for June 30th. And I went back, and when I got the, interesting to hear about commission business from non-commissioners. But I did go back and look at the transcript, and it seemed to be unclear, or that what I heard, I think, from the department, that additional resources weren't needed. So can you share that? Like I say, I went back and looked at the transcript, and that's what it seemed to be saying, although I think what I said is, let me know. Instead of pressing you for an answer right at the meeting, but I thought I heard you say that you didn't need them, but that if you did, to come back. So obviously it's 2 days later. I haven't heard from you, so I'm curious about your thinking, because it sounded like there was 50 to 60 people or individuals or units still remaining between the two shelters that were scheduled to close.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Morrissey, she, her pronouns, DCOO for the county. So just to be really clear, we did have conversations right when we were planning the whole process in January, and we were planning for the budget. The department at this point does feel prepared to support the providers and all of the remaining guests within our existing budget. It's a total of about 51 occupied rooms, so that's less than 4 times the amount that we closed in March between Y East and Market, and each guest will have a person-level plan that will offer placement options for each individual. So I just want to put that on the record.
So I think what you heard is you feel like you have the resources within the existing budget for the 51?
Yeah, so let me provide a little nuance. And for the record, my name is Anna Plum. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director from Multnomah County Homeless Services Department. We have a little more clarity now on the number of remaining units that will be closed as of 6:30. As we were tracking on a weekly basis, we know how many rooms are occupied and what that looks like. Of the 51 rooms that are currently occupied, half of them, 26, are at the Chestnut Tree Inn, which is the housing-focused shelter. The other is a short-term voluntary isolation motel. A lot of those folks in that voluntary isolation motel are coming from another program, and they will return to that program. So if you would assume maybe half of those rooms are folks who might need a place to go, you're talking about maybe 36 households that might need a place to go. And as a reminder, we're only going through the end of this fiscal year. So if all of those were housed, that is, let's say maybe it's $3,000 a household for first month's rent and deposit. That is less than $100,000 or around $100,000 for that first month of expenses. Now that we are close to the end of the year and we have better handle on what we think that would cost, we do think we'll be able to find those resources within the impacted providers and other sort of in-reach housing placement contracts to commit to those folks. So we do think that we can use that now that we have more clarity on that.
So there's 26 approximately that you feel like still need a plan and will need resources.
Yes, and we continue to meet with the shelter managers and talk through the specific needs of the folks in those rooms and what that might look like for those folks.
So I'm just doing a little math here. So if 26 divided, $1 million divided by 26 is 38,000 per. Maybe you could share how you landed, because there's no detail in the APR, but like how you landed on that particular number. And how you envision, and I'm going to ask the department how, like those resources, I mean, my assumption is the department is the one that would allocate any resources, any additional resources that the commission makes available would be allocated through the department.
Yes, any resources would be allocated through the department. As I said earlier to this same question, the $1 million came from a lot of unknown on if there might be hotel or motel vouchering. The providers are not basing the dollar amounts on just housing placement for everyone. They're not sure that that's what they can do. And so some of it is about if they have to hotel or motel voucher people, that's a bit of an unknown cost. I'm happy to have an amendment on the dollar amount that goes out the door. I will say I'm a little surprised by the response today about feeling like you could reallocate dollars when that was explicitly asked just 2 days ago, and the answer was no. So it's a change that feels a little surprising to me, considering we've been in conversation with my staff and myself and you all. So this feels different than what we just talked about when you all were presenting at the budget work session.
So I appreciate the unknown. Again, I raised many of the same issues. Like we had this discussion, and I told you I would be supportive if it was needed, because I outlined just both the impacts that we don't want any of the shelter closures to have people returning to the street, and also like staffing considerations. I do think that, yes, there are some unknowns, but with 26 people, $1 million. And maybe a potential amendment would be to release a certain amount with a, maybe next week, this is just conceptual, with the department coming back with here's the person level plan, here's the resources we expect to need, and we could release more if that's necessary. Given all the other things we're cutting, and I know we're all going through the budget trying to find little dribs and drabs of money. So $1 million for 26 units when staff is saying that they feel like they have the resources, seems more than I'm comfortable, but that we could allow for some sort of release mechanism if it's necessary, but start with an increment.
Again,
given the timing?
I'm happy to take an amendment on the dollar amount that goes out the door, and knowing we could come back if we need to, but I do think it's important that we take action to start getting money out the door today.
I'm trying to have this be a friendly amendment.
No, I hear you. I think
Okay,
it's
so I was just
it's shifting to, instead of saying, like, I don't want to pass $1 million if we think it should be less. And so that's where I'm saying I would accept an amendment to do a lesser dollar amount.
And I will just note, because I think we don't have a board meeting next week. We just have budget meetings on Thursday, so that is why it was scheduled for the 21st. We also had an item today that got removed from the calendar, which was also a part of the scheduling for your item. But I will say that, like, if we want these dollars to be used, for the remainder of the fiscal year, I think having something passed today versus waiting 2 weeks is probably more prudent to do that. So what I would love, because I also had questions about the dollar amount, and so like if there is $150,000, that would be sufficient, just something, because what I do know is that tying up $1 million that's currently in contingency, those monies don't go back to the general fund until FY28. So that, and otherwise, what's left in contingency from the previous fiscal year is part of what we are able to allocate in the FY27 budget, but once they're moved out of contingency into a department budget, then it's held until the fiscal year after that. So I do have a lot of hesitation about the amount and would rather get something that's more based in what we can actually spend and what's actually needed by the providers this year.
So I was going to do a proposal for a friendly amendment before I actually offer the friendly amendment, because I would like it to be a friendly amendment, that we modify the number to 200,000, knowing that this commission, if when we get a person-level plan and additional clarity from the department, that we could, at any time with 24 hours notice, call a special meeting. That if those additional, so there'll be still that 800, the other 800,000 will still be in contingency if we need it. That would allow right away money to be available, and again, the commission with 24 hours notice can call a special meeting if we need to release additional funds. Is that friendly?
It is. But I'm going to hear the motion as that we reduce the amount to 200,000 is the, for this budget modification.
Yes.
Correct, okay. Okay.
Okay, I make that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion under consideration to amend the budget modification to change the amount from $1 million to $200,000 coming out of contingency. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the amendment? I would actually just love to hear from the department what the $200,000 could help facilitate.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a reasonable amount. So if we're setting aside some for housing placement I did some quick math on the cost of a motel for, like, let's say 30 people let's say you estimate $85 a night for 60 days. It's not fully 16 days. That's around 150. So I think the combination of that with some housing placement dollars is a reasonable amount to get us to the end of the fiscal year. I do want to note that if folks are we do have available shelter locations that folks could go to at not the same cost of a motel. If we are putting folks in scatter site motels and they are staying into the next fiscal year, we will have to figure out what it looks like to keep paying for that motel room. And so that's just something we'll have to figure out. So just putting that out there as the fiscal year line crosses, the funding doesn't roll over, so we'll just have to figure that out.
And I mean, and I know you, and I think it was Sarah who said, like, there will be an individual plan for those folks, so they may not have to go to a motel. The best solution might be another shelter or a different place whatsoever. So
that funding could also be used for flexible assistance for someone who's housing ready but has some eviction debt. It could be used for a variety of things for those households if housing is the place for them, and if not, for whatever that next location for them is.
I would say potentially. I just want to name that moving out of a congregate shelter and into a motel shelter and then having to move back to a congregate because of action that we're taking is challenging. So I don't want to pretend that every shelter bed is the same, and I think that's part of why it's about working with the providers on the individual plan to make sure that we're not particularly sending somebody back to a low barrier shelter if they're in a hotel motel shelter and have been working sobriety, for example. So there may need to be some hotel vouchering here.
I'm just going to make a comment, not necessarily about, I guess we'll have the vote on the amendment, and then I can talk generally.
Okay, any other discussion? Commissioner Jones-Dixon or Commissioner Moyer, any other discussion on the amendment?
No.
Okay, Tasia, can we have a vote on the amendment to change the contingency amount?
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson?
Yes, the amendment passes. I like that you were last. That was like a little, it was like mixed up a little bit.
I did remind them that we had changed the board rules.
So I had just this general comment, now that we're on the substance. And this is a little bit for the department, I guess. And this is not it's not going to be a question, but I think this is going to be a prelude to what the commission is going to need to sort of hear and see more specifics. You know, I put down a budget amendment for the next fiscal year, just knowing that in my commission district, there is going to be the potential closing of a whole host of shelters, and that I absolutely don't want to see, and I appreciate the commitment that I've received from the department that people aren't going to be exited to the street. But I think this is a prelude to the maybe a much larger conversation, because this is, you know, there's another 600 approximately units that in 2 months the county may be also closing those shelters, and providers feeling like there's a cliff, people staying at the shelters feeling like there's a cliff, and really wanting to be able to see what that looks like. And I think that's what I've been kind of struggling with, is like, where is lots of conversations happening, but not really seeing on a piece of paper, like, here's how we envision meeting that goal of no one exiting to the street. So just more of a, we're going to have a repeat conversation with, I think, concerns that are being raised now that are very similar to will be concerns that are raised down the road.
I hear you completely. And first, to Commissioner Singleton's comment, I do want to say I apologize if it was misconstrued in the presentation. Everything is rapidly evolving, and we're trying to balance getting all the work done and keeping everyone up to date. So we are committing, Commissioner, on making sure that everyone has a option. And what I'd like to do is also commit to provide the board with updates at an aggregate level in terms of what those options are as we move forward through the transition.
Okay, great. Any other questions on the underlying budget modification as amended? All right, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson?
Yes, the budget modification passes by unanimous consent as amended. I think I got them all in. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Anna and Sarah, for being able to answer the questions on that. That takes us to the end of our agenda for today. Now is when we have time for board comments on non-agenda items. I'd open it up to the commissioners to see if anyone has things that they want to share.
I actually have like 2 pages, but I'm only going to do a couple. I have to give a loud shout out to Garrett Pryor, who I know will get shout outs from others, but knowing that tomorrow is your last day at the county, just want to appreciate you and all the hard work that you've put into your time here, your compassionate views and your honest opinions on issues not just around transportation and infrastructure, but economic development, the amazing work you did on our sanctuary ordinance, and really centering equity and how you do all of your work. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to work with you. I know we'll find ways to work together as transportation nerds in the coming months, but just wanted to make sure you know that I will miss you, my team will miss you, and we really appreciate how you've shown up for the county and the people that we serve. Excuse me, I want to do a quick shout out. We had some, love that. Just a couple of events. Appreciate the Soul District Business Association and the Mixer last week. It was just really awesome to talk with some small business owners around the county's role in economic development. Also want to shout out the young people from the Triple Threat Mentoring Gala and the amazing, amazing work that they did and how they showed up in that space to just really share what their future could look like. And then last night, an awesome event with the Center for Women in Leadership and the Nourish Dinner. It was a beautiful moment of women leaders just really supporting each other. So I wanted to thank folks for that. Again, quickly shout out, Imagine Black Alley Youth The Vote is tonight. People should go. Black Power, lots of amazing, well, we'll see if they're amazing at basketball. Lots of locals playing some basketball tonight to really uplift getting out the vote. Saturday, St. John's Parade at noon. Please come enjoy an absolutely amazing event in our community. It is not just the parade, it's also a bazaar. It's a way to support some really amazing local businesses who will be there, so please come out. I know everything is 30 minutes from St. John's, but get in your car, come out, and come visit us. And just a reminder, on the 16th, I'll have my next community conversation at the Albina Library. So folks in my district, I'll be sharing more info in my newsletter and social media. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other closing comments?
So I just want to shout, make sure everybody knows, May 9th is a season opener for our WNBA team, The Fire. And since we all know that we're the global epicenter of women's sports, I suppose we should all be celebrating that. In addition, I also want to give Garrett Pryor a shout out. So when I first raised the issue, I don't know, in the last year, that I thought the county needed to be more deeply connected into what's happening in our economy here in Multnomah County. I mean, for one reason, because if we have a thriving economy, that allows us to fund our essential public services. And, I got a lot of pushback from a variety of people, like, hey, that's the city's, or in Resolution A in the 70s, that got agreed that was the city's responsibility and the county's doing these other things. But there was one person that I felt was kind of a little bit of a soulmate for me, which is Garrett. And, saying that the county did have a role in a variety of places to help make this a thriving place to live, work, start, operate, and grow a business, and that when the county paid attention to that, that was good not only for the county residents and making it a place where they could afford to live, but that it also really was important to the county's bottom line and central to our mission, because a thriving economy allows us to deliver on our mission, which we could not do without tax dollars. So Garrett, thank you for being the voice for that. I'm really excited where you're going, because I know that you're going to look out for Multnomah County, even though you have some other responsibilities, and the work that we're doing here to make sure this is that we have that thriving economy that supports all of our residents, but also our local businesses. So Godspeed in your new role, and look forward to working with you in that capacity.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon, I don't know if you're still online or if you have any comments to share.
Yep, just ditto to everything that's been shared already. Thank you, Garrett. I'm pretty sure you're blushing back there with your hat on, your dad hat on. Looking forward to continuing the work with you in your new role, especially with all the things that we have going on out in District 4. And I really I appreciate your heart and your honesty and the things that you've done for us over this last year. And then lastly, I just want to say just a happy Mother's Day to everyone out there, especially my mom and my wife. You all are amazing. And that's all I have for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, we can't let Commissioner Jones-Dixon be the only person that does the shout out to their mom.
I still have to go, and so does Commissioner Whitmer. Did you have any announcements to share? No? Yes? No?
Garrett, you will be missed. Mom, I love you.
Yay.
Word will get back to Mom.
I feel like my mother's actually coming here, so now I feel exceptionally bad for not saying Happy Mother's Day. This will be the first Mother's Day I will spend with her in person in almost 30 years, so I am looking forward to that.
Okay, you win.
Every day is Mother's Day for my mom.
So when you live, yeah. So I will say, okay, a couple things. Just a reminder that we have our public budget hearing, our next public budget hearing, the second one happening next week, Wednesday, May 8th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Mount Hood Community College in the Town and Gown Room. There will be a lot of wayfinding and signage to help people navigate around the college campus. Pre-registration is full, but we are going to be holding a few spots for in-person signups, and people can always be added to the wait list. So please join us there, and that will be an in-person budget hearing. There's also still room in our last public budget hearing, which is going to be on Wednesday, May 20th. That is a virtual-only public hearing, and there, as I said, there's still space on that one. I wanted to just send a reminder that it is 1 week left for families to apply for Preschool for All for fall of 26. So please do that. You can apply at pfa.multco.us, pfa.multco.us. And today is Garrett Pryor Day. So I do want to, yay! I want to recognize that it is the last board meeting for a very, very important member of my team, Garrett Pryor. Garrett has been with Multnomah County for a little over 2 years now. He serves as my policy advisor on infrastructure and economic development, which is like the driest title in the world. And it also doesn't even begin to touch on the way that Garrett actually approaches the work that he does, the focus that he gives to people, to relationships, to the humans that are involved in trying to do all of this great work at the county. He has worked on so many things in the last couple of years, just a few of those, like really, working closely with our Animal Services Division and their strategic plan and making sure we're fulfilling the goals of that program. Really, really engaging around our central library issue, working not just with our library leadership and staff and department folks, but working with the neighbors, the businesses around the Central Library, engaging with them, really being creative about ways we can activate the space and have great communication, and that has been a game changer, and so I really want to highlight that one. Whether we're talking about economic development, whether we're talking about workforce, whether we're talking about things like our Central Library projects and some of the goals that we have around that, every piece of that he touches is also about ensuring our partnerships with diverse communities is strong, that we are considering those things, that we are reaching our goals for those things, and that we are thinking differently about the way that we do economic work here at Multnomah County. And I think the things that he's championed around Walnut Park is a huge example of that. This this partnership that we have around Walnut Park, the ways of doing things is just incredible. And I'm so excited about what that project is going to bring to fruition. Really making sure, I want to call out the leadership that he had along with Salome in terms of the policy changes to protect and support our immigrant communities. That was incredible leadership, and he really took on that project for my office in a powerful way. And then Garrett also is always lifting up people just on the day-to-day basis. Like, he does the thing in our team meetings where at the end of the meeting, he always will highlight a county employee that he's engaged with that week that is really going above and beyond or is really making a difference. And that is something that it's just, he's highlighting what good people are doing at the county, but it also just is a huge example of just the amazing human being that Garrett Pryor is. He's a dad, he's a hard worker, he is somebody who really understands where he's coming from and his background and how that impacts not just on the work that he does, but the work that happens at the county. Your policy expertise, your project management is really second to none. But I'll miss you most, not just those practical things, but just your kindness, your personal touch, your humor, and your, all of the things that you do. So I want to thank you so much. You are stepping into your new role as Regional Development Officer at Business Oregon, so we will continue to cross paths. You're still going to be a part of the work that happens here in Multnomah County, and so I'm grateful for that, but most of all, I'm just grateful for you. Thank you, Garrett. All right, that concludes today's regular board meeting. Our next meeting is in 59 minutes. So our budget work session number 9. So we'll see you here very shortly.